All right, welcome back to Innate Life Reclamation, and I am here with another speaker for our upcoming event here at the Heyde Center in Chippewa Falls. It will be on January 17th, 2026, and we are bringing another Wisconsinite up. She's coming up from La Crosse area, although it's not La Crosse, right? Where are you located? Where's your practice?
West Salem.
West Salem, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm really excited to learn her story because we've like intermixed in many of the same groups, but I've actually not gotten the good fortune of hearing her speak yet, but I'm very intrigued by her story. So, Dr. Erica, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about yourself and about your message that you'll be bringing.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So my story in chiropractic and midwifery started as a very young mom. We had our first baby when I was 20. I had just turned 20, so I found out I was pregnant when I was 19. I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was raised in just like Western medicine, probably like the typical
Mhm.
Wisconsin way.
Mhm.
And I went into the healthcare system and I did what they told me would come next and what to do. And I had a everything but a C-section, and postpartum felt extremely disconnected. And there was this inner knowing, which if you're listening to this, you probably understand what I'm saying. It's just this like innate wisdom or ping or like God message that it didn't need to be like that.
Mhm.
And so at the age of 20, I decided that I wanted to be a midwife because I wanted to learn more about this and I wanted other people to not have that experience. And looking back now, it's kind of hilarious because I still really knew nothing, but I knew enough to know that really didn't need to go that way.
Yeah.
So I actually then entered the nursing program. I did a year in the nursing program and I did not like it at all. I was like, wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to learn how to like, help people get healthy, and I'm just learning how to medicate people and how to take care of wounds. I'm like, this isn't my calling, and I just started to feel really disconnected. My husband Kyle was in chiropractic school at the time, and I found myself studying his notes instead of mine, even like the boring origin insertion anatomy, but he was also in embryology with Judy Bahati was one of our professors there, and she's like just a ton of energy. So I found myself like more and more tiptoeing that way and decided that I was gonna do chiropractic. So we stayed in Davenport, Iowa for a lot longer than we thought we
Yeah.
would. I went to or enrolled in chiropractic school and kind of simultaneously got pregnant with our second son, which, again, I still was like in this place of curiosity, which I tell my clients now, I honestly think that's the healthiest place to be in this like surrender and curiosity and what's going to come up for me and what is my body capable of instead of I'm going to have the epidural or I'm going to have a water birth or like those hard, fast rules. So I really loved that pregnancy and honestly that labor and delivery, even though it was in the hospital
Mhm.
because of where my mindset was. And I wanted a specific midwife. I couldn't have her because of insurance. And she said, well, I'll be your doula. And I had no idea what that even was. And we're like, sure, that's fine. So he was born in July of 2010. And the first week in August of 2010, I went and got my doula certification. And he came with me. And my husband and I were both like, we'll never have another birth without a doula again. That was incredible. And that was my quest into what became me becoming a chiropractor and full circle going back to school and becoming a midwife. As a chiropractor, I specialize in core and pelvic floor, which was also a like God moment because I was supposed to travel to Prague with
Mhm.
a girl that I was working with as a student. And I was working a lot with peds with special needs. And she ended up not going. They ended up staying here in the US and doing bracing therapy instead. And I was like devastated because in school, she came in I think it was June. and she was like 15 months old and couldn't even crawl. And
Mm,
by the time that I was going to leave campus, 6 months later, she was walking.
mm,
And it was amazing. So
mm.
I was going over to Prague to learn more about DNS, and that's
What's
dynamic.
DNS stand for? Yeah.
Yeah, dynamic neuromuscular stabilization. So it's a form of therapy that I use. And instead, I ended up in the women's health unit there instead of the peds unit. And so um, that experience, along with my decade plus of experience as a doula and my time as a chiropractor, I love being able to blend that all together and help support people during pregnancy and also postpartum. I think still, we can talk for hours about how prenatal care and labor and delivery needs to change in this world, especially in this country. And I really truly think we will start to move the needle when we just start caring for women better postpartum because they will be just more, it's so vital, like their vitality, their energy, their healing. So I'm pretty passionate about that.
Mhm.
And last November, the first baby, I'm now in our new clinic, and right out this door is a little prenatal or family area, and right across from that are two birth rooms. So last November 11th on 11/11 was the first baby born here in the birth center, which I don't think is a coincidence at
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And yeah, so I still do home birth. I do birth center birth, obviously. I still am in practice for chiropractic along with our four boys and hockey and basketball. And just for a while, previously it felt like, man, I don't know if this is sustainable. And my husband and I talk now about, I think these are the best years right now when first of all, we're not under major construction in our business, and our oldest is 18 and a senior, and it's a really good time.
That's beautiful. And I mean, that could be a whole nother podcast episode of how do you stay joyful when sometimes it feels so intense. We were
Yeah.
just talking about that yesterday of how, okay, you think back on your life, and I'm sure you could give us probably a deep teaching on this of like you go from, okay, I'm in high school, then I go to college, and all of a sudden the bar is raised and there's more capacity, and I have to learn how to swim in that. And some people do that gracefully and some people don't, right? Then add a baby mid, in there and learning capacity of finishing schooling and having children. But whether it is like, oh, I finish school and then I start work or I go to grad school, it's like at each stage of the game, there is like a demand on the system that increases
Yes.
the capacity. And you either, I think, surrender into it and allow more help and more grace for yourself and grace for everyone else in the process, or you kind of get squashed by it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a little bit of both, right?
Yes.
Um,
And it's always so much easier to see that in hindsight,
for sure.
right? So I really think it's a constant practice of remembering to be here now. And if any of my midwifery clients listen to this podcast, they will probably chuckle because I say that so often during labor. It just like, it's so grounding in no matter what sort of intensity or transition that you're in.
That's great. Well, and such a also metaphor for birth because
Right.
like in the contraction, really intense. I've had two boys, and my first birth was both were home birth with midwife, but the first birth was a very different birth than the second birth, mainly because I think I had no real experience in my nervous system of like you are not in control and the only way out is through, and
Yes.
versus like the second time it was kind of like I was just like, okay, just go in.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you said earlier when you said, I think the best place to be is in curiosity, about what could be. And like, I have an intention here, but I'm also just curious how this is going to roll.
Yeah.
I agree with you. My midwife, I had a question earlier in the week. Someone asked, like, who's your superhero? And I was like, I think it depends on what we're talking about. But my
Yeah.
midwife would be one of those people. I really wore her confidence both births, but first for sure in the first one. And she had said something to me, and I'd love your thought on this too. I asked her, and I remember feeling like the first time I was much more hardened and more like type A at that point. And she felt so woo-woo to me, like, which is saying something because I'm pretty woo-woo.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, like, I don't know if we're a good fit. Like, and she was talking to my baby, and I wasn't really talking to my baby in my belly, right? And
Yeah.
it just felt like I felt disconnected, but she felt connected, but it felt weird to me, right?
Yes.
And I asked her at one point, like, should I be reading something? And this was probably like 4 months into pregnancy. And she was like, do you think you need to be reading something? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, well, she's like, I find when people get too educated about this, it generally works against us. It's like you're too in your mind. So she's like, if you really want me to give you some recommendations, I can, but I don't feel that you need to read something specifically. If you have specific questions, we can talk about it. And I was like, okay, that works for me because I understood the idea of like, yeah, like innately my body already knows how to do this.
Hmm.
Um, but I know not everyone already has chiropractic philosophy built in them
Right.
to understand what she was saying, which was just like trust the process
For
here.
sure.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
And there's a level of, I mean, I agree with that. And I can't even say, like, well, I agree with that to an extent because I think she said it so well. And of course, there is a way to gather information, right? And educate yourself, but it's got to still be from that place of curiosity
Right. Or
and
not
not
holding
from,
so tightly to it
yeah,
should be at this point, then this happens, then this.
yes.
Yeah.
It's not like a, hey, read this to know how to X, Y, or Z. And
Yeah.
I see this all the time with first-time parents or especially with dads. They want to know like, okay, what do I do? And there's so much of it depends, and it depends on what's going on. And I do think one of my strengths is being able to read the room and knowing like when is it time to step in or when is it time to just like be quiet and observe and just that reassure when is it time to even use a few words for reassurance. And I do see that the people that have this prescription for their home birth typically struggle a little bit more. And I chuckle too because I had this was years ago as a doula. um, I had someone come to me and I was doing childbirth ed at the time and she was I believe she was a therapist or of some sort. And so we had this like series and one of the classes was on mindset. And she said, "Oh, I don't need to come to that because I'm already trained in that." And I thought, "Oh no." Oh no. That's like, that's not a training that you take
Yeah.
and then you're done. That's life.
Yeah.
And we ended up not working together, which, I always think that when that happens, it's probably a blessing for both people. And we are at the births we're meant to be at. But it's funny that you say that because with my first, so we had two hospital births and then two home births. And with the first home birth, it was a water birth. And well, first of all, when I was in chiropractic school, when Kyle started chiropractic school, my husband, I was standing in our kitchen in Davenport talking to my mom on the phone. And I was in nursing school at the time, and she was like, "You're going to be one of those chiropractors' wives that has her babies at home." And I was like, "No, not a chance." So it's
And we are.
hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then with our first home birth, um, which was our third born son, it was the doula that was at our second birth. She was one of the midwives.
Mhm.
It was Cynthia Calais, which you might have heard of. She's passed now, but she's attended thousands of births.
Mhm.
And Sherry was another there. So there's three midwives there. I had never met Cynthia yet. She had just come back to the area. She's actually mentioned in the book Pushed by Jennifer Block, which is the very first book that I read
Okay.
that like blew my mind about why things are. She walks in, this flowy skirt,
Yeah.
tank top, no bra, big old Ziploc bag of herbs, and I thought, what on
I
earth?
love it.
And now I'm like, I want to know what's in the bag of herbs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, just that transition. And we can only get to the point where we are meant to be in our calling by going through it, just like with labor.
Yes. Yeah. So true. And I would love your thoughts on this too, but I think back, it's like it really was, there's few points in your life where you're like, oof, like that radically changed me. And I obviously
Yeah.
believe that probably anytime a child is born, there's radical change, of course. But the radical change also that came from knowing, like, holy moly, like I just grew life and then actually like allowed it through me. And now we're doing this
Yeah.
thing called nursing. And one of the second things that she, besides the actual like birthing Jack for me, it was the confidence she also had in that, you know, I always say to people is like if you can make it through like the first month of nursing, it gets easier and easier generally, right? Like if you can, those first weeks are so intense, right?
Yes.
They can be so challenging, and there's so many new feelings in your body that it's not it's another level of like if birth has these really intense points at times, like so does everything that comes right after that, right?
Yes.
So I think for her, like her confidence in me was this like radical shift of just like really understanding how much power we all hold in our lives and like really the essence of like women being able to trust their own bodies and their systems is like something that I think there's a lot of ramifications for that in our society of like where that has been maybe not allowed real well, and what that can do for someone when they do get to have that. And so
Hmm.
I can imagine, like, I always do feel that if I wasn't a chiropractor, that now that I've seen what a midwife can do for someone, I was like, so maybe I'm like your protege down the road. So,
Yeah. I love it.
but I love that just because it's such a beautiful, you're like birthing the baby, but you're birthing the woman through that
Absolutely.
experience too. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I can only imagine how rewarding and also intense your job
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yes, of course there's so many beautiful moments and there's really, really, really hard times too. It's not for the faint of heart, and I would be lying if I didn't say that even this year I've questioned what am I doing multiple times. But I think that what I found is that recentering on am I meant for this? Is this meant for me? And we just continue to shed layers of our ego with more experience and more maturity and more transition. And when you can lean into that and surrender into that, I think you really find what your true calling is. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's so scary because it can be this like, you know it in your body, but it's this major change in your life, and you have to have the right people around you to allow you to be vulnerable enough to really step into that. And
Mm.
that's also no different than birth.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
have to just be surrounded by the people that will love us through it and support us and like, let us be vulnerable even when it's hard, especially when it's hard.
Mhm.
And that what you said earlier about, okay, yeah, like staying curious and just, here's my plan. I want to see how this goes. And I think birth as a birthing woman humbles us in that way, new way every single time. But just as a woman, like as a mother after baby's born, as an entrepreneur,
Mm.
you gain this sort of experience that you almost start to expect that this is going to be nothing like I imagined it.
Yeah.
And I can either let that scare the shit out of me, or I can be so excited to see what is actually in store. And of course, some days are going to be like, I need to curl up in a ball.
Yeah.
And my support person and my preceptors made me a security blanket, like a tie blanket
That's
when I
awesome.
graduated. And so sometimes I use that with a good cup of tea or coffee if I need to. But yeah, it's like, I don't know, birth is just so many things in birth are metaphors for our life and vice versa.
That's beautiful. That. is so, yes, it is a metaphor for life, right? Like we're all birthing something and different iterations of ourselves all the time.
Hmm.
And to your
I
point, like what's the quote? Like you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right?
Yes,
Like,
100%. I just said to my husband the other night, and I'm like, I hope I never, the day that I never have off for this anymore is when I
mm,
know that I need to be done. And we were just like, getting ready for bed. And I was like, Kyle, there's babies born in our practice. Like, there's life that comes into the world in this building. That is insane. And it makes me get teary-eyed even just thinking about it. And it's like, oh my gosh,
mm,
how crazy and like how thankful I am to have that experience and be able to offer something like that and support women and families and really emphasize the entire experience, not just birth, but you deserve to be supported prenatally. And, like we said,
yeah.
postpartum for sure. And it's like, that the birth is the shortest part of all of it. Transition and that really intense part is usually the hardest
Mhm.
in life, in birth.
Yeah. Yes. All transitions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're an amazing, I mean, I feel like I don't know you, but I do know you.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
and and I always, there's a few people in the world, and I think you're one of them, where there's like, you can feel that the like grace and softness, and at the same time, this very sturdy fierceness about them. And I definitely think you are one of those people that are like truly like almost like a warrior spirit, but like in a graceful way, right? Where it's like, I'm here to hold a line to make sure that this wisdom that we all carry is seen more or less, and that I'm a cause for change, but not railing against what's not working either.
Right.
Right?
Thank
And
you for saying that. That is quite the compliment. So thank you.
you're welcome. I mean it. So we're really excited to have you up here. I think we titled your talk, or you titled your talk, I'm not sure where it came from, like womb wisdom and
Yes.
and birthing. So we're excited to have you sharing both with chiropractors and the teams as well as the public. So dot dot dot.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. And then if people wanted to reach out on Instagram or find you, like what's your handle?
Sure. The Movement Midwife is probably the best place to find me. Our practice is Cooley Health and Cooley Health Birth Collective, so they're on there as well. But to find me personally, the Movement Midwife on Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you, Erica.